Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 36 of the Giant Zone. And this is a special one. Great win today. 4-1's feeling really good right now. We're really psyched. We're really pumped about this team. So we decided, you know what? Why don't we do a show and just let everybody know how excited we are and just kind of go over this game today. This was a great game. Big win. And of course, you've got your two co-hosts here, Steve the Banker, and you've got yourself, yours truly, Fly Guy Carl, and we are just pumped. And Steve, brother, take it away. How you feeling right now?
I can't. I'm trying to be quote unquote professional and not have the biggest, stupidest grin on my face. You think we just won the Super Bowl the way I'm smiling, man. I told you when we decided to do this show, literally shortly ago, I finally got my voice back. I couldn't stop screaming at the end of the game. Unbelievable.
Yeah, this look, I'll be honest. I I expected a close game. I predicted a win. I wasn't completely sure if we were going to get it. And boy, when was the last time, Steve, that we've been able to say this Giants team is fun to watch?
Even 2016 when they had that one great year where they got all those free agents. I mean, it was fun, but in some ways, there were so many free agents. It was such a free agent packed team that uh, there were some very likable guys in some respects. There were some guys that weren't so likable, but it wasn't like they were homegrown. It wasn't like we drafted many of them, and it wasn't. This just feels different.
Yeah. And boy, you know, I know I've said it on numerous times. We both have, Steve, on numerous shows. But boy, what a difference coaching makes.
Coaching matters.
I mean, you could just, they're in their heads.
Yeah.
That's that. I've said it to a couple people after this game today. We are now a dangerous team. We are now a very dangerous team. They believe, and when you got a team that believes in itself, boy, anything's possible. Anything.
Yeah, there's some really well-known offensive minds in football. Obviously, Andy Reid, obviously McDermott at the Rams, but there's others, right? Shanahan, people have been touting him for years and what he's done in San Francisco, the way he's created this run first, uh, run RPO attack out there with this amazing offensive line that just powers and wills its way. And there's a few guys out there that are known for their offensive creativity, but I can't think of too many teams. And yes, Spags was awesome for us in the Super Bowl one with the NASCAR, but that was very much a bend don't break, right? When we think about the NASCAR, if it was because we only had to rush four and then
Yeah.
yeah. And he's in Kansas City, so we still have love for Spags. But at the end of the day, it's not like, oh my God, when you play Kansas City, that defense is an all-time great defense. We better watch. It's the offense. We all know it's the offense and the creative genius there of Andy Reid and what he's built with that staff and the team. And the general manager there has done a great job, obviously.
Right.
But there's I guess what I'm trying to say is there's not too many teams in the NFL, and I didn't prepare this thought, so I'm trying to think off the top of my head where it's all three phases. Even if we're not ready to anoint McGahee as a great special teams coach, I'm just saying from top to bottom, who our head coach, and we're only 5 games in, but you feel like we're not going to get out coached offensively or defensively, or, and I know you were very big on this last week. It was a great point you made with all the crazy things that happened at the quarterback position last week. It was amazing to you, you said, and it was such a great point you made about how, man, then Tyrod had to come in, but then Tyrod went down and it was like seamless. It was fluid. They were so prepared. So you have the head coaching and then you have offense and defense. Like, we're not going to get beat from that. And not only we're not going to get beat, I can't think of how many teams, forget the Giants. I can't think of how many teams in the NFL where those three, so I'm taking away special teams, head coaching, which is the game management, the culture, being a leader, in-game prep, and then offense, Kafka, defense, Wink. I can't think of a team that has all three of those slam dunk. The Bills have had their moments, but they have a brand new offensive coordinator who's had his good moments and bad. I don't know. Like, I can't think of another team right now where they have more of an advantage than we do.
And to think about it, again, and this is something else that we've been saying all year, is that this coaching staff has shown the ability to make in-game adjustments, and it's been huge. Look, they did it again today, right? They shut out Green Bay that entire second half. And we were all complaining during the first half that Rodgers is going up and down the field. The Giants scored late in the second half, and there's Rodgers with 1:15 left, and he goes down the field and they put up a field goal. So all right, it was better than a touchdown. But boy, they got together at halftime. This is what's working. This is what's not. Let's fix this. And it's just, it's been great to watch. The feeling of confidence again, and the feeling of pride to be a Giant fan again. It feels great, and to have so much confidence in not only the players but the coaching staff. And again, that next man up mentality. Jackson went down. Bobby Lane comes in and lays a big stick on Alan Lazard, who drops a pass. I mean, just that whole mentality. You could see this team has bought in, and they're dangerous. At this point, there's nobody on this schedule that I'm afraid of where I'm going to say, hey, we're going to get our doors blown off.
I just listened to Kayvon during the post-game pressers. I had a chance to listen to all the post-game presser interviews, and they asked Kayvon, talk about adjustments. You didn't have any sacks, but boy, I think it was John Schmilk from Giants.com who was the one asking the questions. Talk about the pressure that you were able to apply, and blah, 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 blah. I forget how he phrased it. I'm not doing it justice. And Kayvon, he's great in interviews. He doesn't even have to think. He immediately responds. He's very articulate. He thinks very quickly on his feet. And he said, hey, he goes, one of the things that we adjusted at halftime was we realized how we were getting pressure on Aaron, and that if we could come up the middle and apply pressure when he was passing, and he said it was by design, they were able to get those batted passes at the end of the game. Yes. Like that was because we changed our pressure scheme and we started jumping up and focusing, hey, bat the ball down. And that was strictly from up above. Yes. Wink, the guys in charge, saying, hey, you're not going to get Aaron from around the edges. He's just, and I still say Kayvon was being held half the game when he was in there. It was ridiculous. But he's a rookie. Maybe he's got to earn it. It is what it is. It's the NFL. But again, to your point, halftime adjustments. We think of halftime adjustments like his offense, but defense, that's a very nuanced thing. Like pressure, we often think, are we blitzing or are we not blitzing? But sometimes it's about where are you putting guys to close that window that a quarterback is able to see his receivers. Yeah. And in this case, bat the ball down. How great. I mean, just unbelievable.
And we can go through it, but again, Daniel Jones was not asked to run during the first half, right? So they didn't want to rely on his legs. They didn't want him running. Second half, you know what? Hey, Daniel, let's open this up. Whatever you got to do. He came up with some big runs.
Yeah.
As he's been doing all season long, he showed heart. I actually think that this was a big step forward today for Daniel Jones.
Huge.
One thing that I've been saying, and you agreed with, that the concern with Daniel Jones was he's not the guy, he's not a leader. He's not the guy that says, hey, I'm going to put this team on my back and I'm going to will this team to victory. He did that today. Hands down. And Giant fans, people out there on Twitter that don't like Daniel Jones, any Giant fan that's watching that doesn't like Daniel Jones, I dare you to come at me this week and blame him and give me something negative about him. He checked all the boxes this week. And you all need to be prepared. Long season to go, but if he continues down this path, he will be back next year. You've heard it here first, and I'm going to defend that. Until he proves otherwise, I'm going to defend it.
Because this was last minute, we were so excited with this win. It almost feels like a playoff win. It was so unexpected, and it's and that's why you and I decided to do this show tonight. It's, for those listening, it is unusual for us to do it on a Sunday night. We do have a method to our madness. We like to wait until at least a day or two, because we like to see the injury reports. We like to have a day of interviews and player profile, And so there's a method to why we wait at least today. His stat line versus Aaron Rodgers. And look, Aaron Rodgers is not only one of the best quarterbacks in football still. I don't care what people say. He's one of the greatest of all time.
Yes.
We know that. So this is not me saying, oh, Daniel is like it. But Daniel was 21 of 27 for 217 yards.
Yes.
Aaron was 25 of 39 for 222.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron Rodgers, I can't believe that, just like Aaron Rodgers, I'm thinking of him. Aaron Rodgers threw 12 more attempts, but only had 5 more yards throwing.
Yes.
His quarterback rating, Daniel's, was 100.2.
Yes.
Aaron's was 96.3.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, the eye test, Aaron Rodgers is 10 times better than Daniel. I mean, it doesn't have to, you could see the way he manipulates, the way it's a masterclass when you watch Aaron Rodgers, and it was a masterclass today. In my opinion, they didn't lose the game today because of Aaron Rodgers. Right. But the flip side of that is we're not losing games because of Daniel Jones either. Like he's turned a corner, I think. And what we're watching before our very eyes is much like when Ryan Tannehill left Miami and went to Tennessee, much like when Kirk Cousins got an opportunity because Robert Griffith III went down, RG3, and he started turning a corner. But then it took it to an even another level when he left and went to Minnesota. What we're seeing before our eyes, and it's put up or shut up. We didn't extend him. Is a guy who is being developed. Yes. And he's not had a coaching staff. I think Pat Shurmur was probably going to start doing that a little bit with him. Pat Shurmur is probably talented enough from what we've seen in the past. Daniel Jones had some great statistic games. But what we're seeing is the proper maturation of a quarterback. He hasn't turned the ball over. He's not, I mean, he's had some interceptions, but those weren't his fault. Right. He's not fumbling the ball, knock on wood. He's not turning the ball over, throwing stupid interceptions. It's exciting, I think, to see what Steve, the future holds.
To echo that, Steve, it makes me wonder, was he the square peg in the round hole with previous regimes? In other words, look, we said it after Daboll, Shane were hired, sorry, was that they came right out and said, we are going to develop the system around him, as opposed to these other coaching staffs that, here's Daniel Jones, well, here's the system you got to play. We are going to run this system. And again, it's all coaching. It is. But isn't it amazing how the right system and the right coaches can take players that look like they weren't going to be good or underdeveloped, and they just look so much better. It's just so exciting to see. And here's one thing also that really surprised me was with the two running backs that Green Bay has. They ran for a total of Jones and Dillon, 19 carries between the two of them. If I was Green Bay, I would have tried pounding them and pounding them and pounding them to set up the pass. We all saw that Aaron Rodgers was having a lot of success throwing the ball early. Can you imagine if they just stuck with the run and then they kind of did us a favor. Now, how much of that was Wink's game planning, taking them out of their game plan? I don't know, but they got away from the run very, very early. And I was surprised by it. I was happy to see it. Very, very happy to see it, but just really, really impressed with this entire team. But let's entire game. But let's kind of go both sides of the ball here. So you want to start offense or defense?
Well, let's take a step back and talk high level. I think keys of the game. And let me say this. In response to what you just said, I was not surprised. I actually think they did the right thing in some ways. We had a defensive back who was basically on the street filling in for Aaron Robinson. And then when Adoree went down, we had a second one. Yeah. Those are two defensive backs that anyone in the NFL could have had. So I can't remember if they were waiver wire or they were just free agents. I think they were cut from other teams. So the point is, they picked apart our weakness, or that's what they were doing in the first half. I mean, they scored 20 points, but then we held them scoreless in the second half because I think, to your point, they didn't do a very good adjustment of. So I said this morning on Twitter there were a couple of keys to the game, and not that I had any idea whatsoever that we really truly had a chance to win, but this was like, hey, clock management. Well, we won that. We won the battle of possession, 32 minutes and 11 seconds to 27:49. The turnover battle, I mentioned, well, play a clean game. I don't want to see a ton of penalties. And of course, turnovers. We had one fumble, they had four. Now, some of those fumbles were their defender got a ball, but then fumbled it out of bounds. It all counts. It's fumbles or fumbles. Those were opportunities where they could have retained possession. 4 fumbles to our 1. And of course, no interceptions by us. And the rushing attack, to your point, Carl, I mean, I know we have Saquon, but I thought they were just going to key in on that, and it was going to be a 60-yard day for Saquon, very little. And they were just going to swarm because we had no receivers. And we'll get to Darius Slayton. That was a huge surprise.
Yeah.
And they had the pony, right? They had 2 really good running backs. So to your point, I thought even if Aaron isn't having a lot of success, and his rookie wide receiver, the higher draft, yeah, he went down with an injury, but he still had Dobbs. But he had Lazard, he had Cobb, Cobb's our killer.
Yes.
125 rushing yards to their 94. We won the rushing battle.
Yes.
So that's not the only reason we won, obviously. But to me, those were 3 of the biggest key takeaways, because if we could do those 3 things, then at least we're in it. We're in the game. So back to you about offense versus defense, if you want to kind of start with one or the other.
Let me ask you a quick question. So Saquon ran for 70 today. 40 was on the big one run. I get it. Just thinking, if he didn't come out for that spell in the third quarter, do you think he gets 100 yards today rushing?
I mean, who knows? He had momentum, but the funny thing is, when he came back, he was talking in the post-game presser about how he had this, like, you could see this frenetic energy he had because he was like angry. He wanted to get back out there, but in his words, they were following protocols because he had the shoulder. They wanted to make sure he was okay. And I don't know that he would have had that reception, which he then broke for
36, I think it was
36 yards. Would he? So then the question is, yeah, but would he have had that play? Because he came back like angry. Like he was like, I'm pissed and I'm going to do something. I'm going to have an impact.
Yeah.
So maybe he would have had more rushing, but I don't know that he would have had that reception. Maybe Kafka wouldn't have called that. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So what are some things that you want to talk about the offense? What stuck out to you about the offense? And I agree with you about Slayton. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, for folks that follow me on Twitter, I said it during the game on Twitter. The thing that impressed me most was, I could be wrong. Maybe I don't notice it. Maybe because we don't know. I don't look at the all 22. I don't see I'm not at the games, unfortunately, right now. But I can't remember this season if they've done it. And I know it hasn't been done in the past where Slayton has done deep crossers. I've only seen Slayton as, if he plays at all, quite frankly, since his rookie year even, hey, he's a go route.
On the fly.
Yeah, just send him deep. And I think as fans, we were kind of okay with it because we're like, well, he doesn't have the best hands. In fact, sometimes his hands are terrible. I think he had the most drops in the league last year. But his speed is phenomenal. He takes the top off of defense. So he's our third option at receiver because we usually had 1 or 2 receivers even better than him. Just let him run deep. Just go route. Just, yeah, Slayton. How smart of Kafka to do those deep crossers, those mid-range and long-range crossers. He was open every time, and he should have had that one reception we saw him. Listen, he doesn't have a good catch radius. He doesn't have great hands. And the body control to do what like and we were spoiled back in the day with OBJ to be able to turn back and catch a ball that's as you're physically moving forward, slow down and just get that ball. That's an Odell Beckham. And there's plenty of receivers in the league that can do that. That's not his game. So Daniel, unfortunately, has to be a little bit more precise, but I think even the announcer said Slayton needs to come down with that ball. Fine. But So that would have given him 100 yards. I mean, the kid had, how many did he have?
76 was it? I think
79 yards.
79. Yeah,
Holy crap. We have our number one wide receiver now.
yeah,
I'm not saying he's a true number one in the league, but in that wide receiver room, he needs to be our wide receiver one now for the rest of the season. Like, this kid just needs to play.
yeah.
He's got speed. And now what you're doing is you're forcing defenses to prepare for a guy that's going to take a 10 or 20 or 30-yard crosser in this, especially if you play zone. Don't play zone against us, because now we can send him. And what's beautiful is it doesn't take 5 seconds for that play to develop. So now the offensive line, which is still a work in progress, that interior especially, but Evan on the right side, if he has a bad game, Daniel doesn't have to. So I was just so happy with Kafka using Slayton in that way. I've never seen that before, and to me, that's a game changer. That changes our offense, and it opens things up even more when it's working for Saquon, for our tight ends, for our other receivers. We saw Sills had a nice tiptoe catch on the sidelines. It's if he can get blood from a stone and figure out like that to use Slayton, wow, like, okay, we're still not going to have a top 10 offense, but that changes things.
And you know what? Credit to Kafka and Dable, and you know what? Even to Daniel Jones for not giving up on Slayton, not using him as a decoy, going back to him. You're on this team. We need you. We believe in you.
Yep.
And, you know, I put it on Twitter during the game as well. If this is the game that all of a sudden the light bulb has now gone on for Darius Slayton and his confidence is back, boy, are we a much better team because of that. And with him, you know, in that role. And you know, just
Carl, you saw his body language when you say the word confidence.
Yes.
When you say the word confidence, in my mind, I'm like, what did the last regime? Think of like the drops, the constant drops, and the constant and constantly getting hurt. He was like he got up like
He was on a mission.
You saw his body language.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, talking about Kafka, how about the double reverse?
Yeah.
At the goal line for a touchdown, or in the red zone, let's say, for a touchdown. You know, when was the last time we saw a Giant offense run a double reverse, period, let alone within the red zone for a touchdown?
Well, what was cool is they were saying, and I checked it again on replays, it looked like Bellinger had the opportunity. It was almost an RPO. Once he got the ball, he had an opportunity if somebody was open to throw it or just run it in. So he looked for a second, and if you saw, he held it out like a loaf of bread, which made me very nervous.
Yes, me too.
They were going to strip it from him. But I think that's because he was thinking for a split second, okay, what's my key? Is the guy open? Nope, tuck it, run. Yeah, that was amazing.
And you know what? Credit to Kafka. Defense, this is not the same old vanilla offense. You know, defenses are now, he's keeping them off balance. They can't key on any one player or one play. He's proving that, hey, look, we've got weapons. Well, we're going to come at you a couple different ways. I mean, just it's really great to see. And then, Steve, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to go into this next point. That drive in the third quarter where Brightwell got the touchdown. Best drive of the season by far. That's been the best drive I've seen out of this team in years. It was ball control. It was a mix of run and pass. Again, kept the defense off balance. Clock management. I mean, everything you wanted, you got it in that drive.
Tough runs by DJ.
Yeah, and they even kept going back. And he came up with a big first down run on that drive. And they even kept going back to Aaron Rodgers and saying, boy, you're keeping him off the field. That's what you want to do. And you can see Aaron Rodgers was frustrated. He was on the sideline shaking his head, and he was pissed off.
Yeah.
Look, Aaron Rodgers pissed off is a weekly thing. I get it. But still, it was just I was so impressed with that drive. I really just.
You know, let me give you another stat. One of who would you say It's a loaded question. Who would you say is the scariest defensive player on Green Bay's defense, at least for me, that I was worried about?
There's two of them. I mean, they've got was it Darius Smith, I think, the linebacker?
No, no, he used to be on their team.
No, who's the linebacker they have now? Is it
So their linebacking core is okay. I mean,
but
it's
you know who scares me the most? Jareer Alexander.
so it was his first game back at corner. He
Yes.
was one of, if not the best corner in football, but
Yes.
and they got him in their safety back. But the two guys that I was scared about most is Kenny Clark.
Yeah,
He's
oh, yeah.
he's been Dexter Lawrence for much longer. He's
Yes.
insane. He's a hell of a player. And University of Michigan, Rashawn Gary, the guys, I think he had
Oh, yeah. That's
five,
what I was thinking of, Steve. I'm
I
sorry.
think he has 5 sacks already this season. Um, he didn't have a single sack. Now he had some pressures and he had some tackles for loss, so he was still an impact. But um, I guess where I'm leading with all this is one of the things I was very pleased about was that they called some designed rollouts, some bootlegs and rollouts for Daniel, not to be a runner, but to move the pocket. Thank you, to create a new pocket. And he was able to find some receivers 5 yards, 10 yards, 20 yards down the field only because they rolled. So it was like, hey, let's be smart about. I guess where I'm going with all this is I made a comment again, also just on Twitter during the game. And I was so frustrated and disgusted with how anemic our offense was early on. And I made a comment. I said, but you know what, everyone? And I'm paraphrasing. I forget how I said it, but I used the word, my metaphor of a boxer jabbing. And I said, I've said this before. I know I've been frustrated with our offense. I think only one out of the 4 games we previously played did our offense actually open up and have a tremendous success early on in the game. I forget which game it was, but most of the games, it's all about those halftime adjustments. But what we learned in the post-game pressers and later is it was actually Kafka like jabbing to set up the punch, much like a boxer, right? Like that was him just testing out the defense. Let's see how they're playing us. And then, I'm going to flip the cards on you in the second half. And I said it today. I was like, God, I hope that's what this is because our offense looks terrible, right? It wasn't looking so great. And I hope it doesn't become a regular thing because if we'll have a Dallas game if we keep every single week relying on our offense to snap out of it in the second half. But it really does just go show you how Kafka is a young offensive coordinator. He's never done this before, and he's making the adjustments.
He's not afraid. He's not afraid to get out of his game plan, tweak his game plan. He's not afraid to take chances. What a breath of fresh air. And I said this on Twitter during the game, Steve. Isn't it amazing how Daniel Jones looks with protection?
Yeah.
And again, you know what? We've been saying all along, he hasn't had a line in front of him, hasn't had a protection. Well, now you see what we have. And again, I'm not saying he's Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady. I'm not. But boy, oh boy, look what he can do when he's got protected. What was he, 21 or 27 today?
Yeah.
No interceptions. When he can see the field and he can see the play develop, he's a pretty accurate quarterback, isn't he?
Let's just go there with Daniel. It's not instant reaction from the game. This has been building in me all week, and I've made a couple comments on Twitter, and I've appreciated some positive feedback about it. This isn't me having a hot take, and this isn't me like having instant reaction, overreaction to just a nice game from Daniel. I don't want to. I really don't think it is. Because it's not my idea. Actually, it wasn't me originally. I heard someone this past week in the media make a really smart comment, and they said, it was an NFL analyst, and he said, I think what you're going to start seeing, the NFL as a copycat league, is it started with Kansas City years ago now. Actually, this was like 6 years ago, if we remember. Mahomes, when was he drafted? 2017 or whatever. They had Alex Smith, and Alex Smith took them to the playoffs. He was very successful there. and they decided to keep him, but they couldn't get over the hump. And they said, you know what? Let's keep Alex Smith until we find a quarterback we fall in love with. And the rest is history. They fell in love with Patrick Mahomes. They had enough draft capital to trade up for him. Why? Because the previous few seasons they passed on quarterbacks. They had invested their draft capital in building a team around. So when the time came to trade precious draft capital to move up to get Patrick Mahomes, it wasn't like, oh, but you're trading away all these draft picks. It's okay. We've built a foundation. This person said, you know, we're starting to see that around the league the last few years. If we think about what they've done in Minnesota with keeping Kirk Cousins, if we think about what Tennessee had done with keeping Ryan Tannehill, you can make the playoffs. You may have a chance to go to a championship. Obviously, the goal is always to win a Super Bowl. But if you make the mistake of drafting a quarterback who's not the right guy, don't swing and miss when you're not sure. You can set your franchise back for 5, 7, 10 years even. Yeah. So what we're starting to see, and I never really processed that. It's like, oh, yeah. You know, don't draft the wrong quarterback. But no, this is like happening. It's starting to happen more. So the reason I said all that on Twitter and the reason I'm bringing it up now is if he really is improving like this, and he's not Josh Allen, he's not, you know, but if he can get, and we're seeing it, what did we say till today? Oh, but he still hasn't passed for 200 yards. What happened today? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they still haven't beaten a really good team. Really? They beat a really good team today.
Haven't scored over 20 points yet.
Did it today. So if we can see him improve even 5 or 10% a week, not a lot, but a little bit, then what's the finished product? And oh, by the way, if he makes it through a season healthy, which he's never done, and he makes it through the end of the year, why not give the kid a 2-year contract with maybe a avoidable 3rd year so it's salary cap friendly and he's happy and blah, 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 blah. And he may continue to improve. And I say all that to say, because guys, look, there's like one incredible quarterback prospect right now, I think, and that's CJ Stroud. The kid from Kentucky has all the physical tools, but I'm hearing different things from some of the people in the media about him. The kid in Alabama won the Heisman. He's amazing. He's generational. Guys, he's 5'10" and 185 pounds. He's not Russell Wilson. He's not Kyler. Right. He's not even at the 200-pound mark. He's not thick. And the kid can't even make it through a college football season. You think he's going to make it through an NFL season? There's no like blow your mind college quarterback prospects right now. Now, the season's not over, and let's see, you know, postseason, but I don't know that we're going to have a high enough draft pick to even get the few that you all may fall in love with.
Correct.
It's seeming more and more like a possibility, like maybe they re-sign him.
I brought that up on our show last week. That, you know, maybe you sign him for 2 years, 30 mil or something like that, just to keep it going. You know, maybe in their evaluation, they feel, hey, you know what? Right, we're not going to get that high draft pick, so we're not going to get that guy. And, well, what's left? We feel that we've got a better quarterback already. There's a transition. There's a transition tag. There's a franchise tag. They can still get very creative here. You know, everybody, oh, he's going to want too much money. He may not.
I don't think it's going to be like how Dak held the Cowboys hostage.
Right.
You know what? He had every right to. They decided not to re-sign him. They could have. And then when they finally did need to re-sign him, it was like, hey, guys, you could have re-signed me a year or two ago. Well, the price went up now. Right. And you need me more than I need you. I don't think Daniel is in that position. So I don't know. It's who would have thought just, you know, 2-3 games ago. But let's see. I'm asking everyone to at least be open to the idea, because if we don't, and I can't imagine the general manager, Joe Shane, and the staff reaching for the wrong guy either. And it's not often that a Lamar Jackson falls to you at 31 or 32, or, you know, it's not often that a great quarterback falls down to you. What if we do make a wild card? What if we win 10 games? At this rate, winning 10 games is totally possible. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, everyone. Don't get me wrong. But what if we did? We're not picking top 10. And, you know, and what would it cost? What would we have to trade up?
Right.
CJ Stroud's probably going to be one of the top 2 or 3 picks. We're not going to get him. So anyway, it just, I'm asking everyone to be open to it because this kid's improving before our eyes.
And again, you know what? I don't think it's going to come down to actual number of wins. I don't. I think it's going to be just overall play, that leadership quality. And he showed it today. Look, the offense in the second half, they made adjustments. They were choppy at first, but once they made the adjustments and saw what Green Bay was doing, the offense actually flowed pretty well. So again, they're not Kansas City. They're not Buffalo. I'm not all starstruck here, guys. By no means am I. There's work that needs to be done. This roster still is far from complete. I think next year you're going to see a go-to receiver here. You're going to see a big impact receiver here next year. You're going to see some more linemen here next year, obviously. So I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. It feels great, but he's showing that he's serviceable. He's showing that he's got some moxie, and that you can win with him. And so many people were no, and I don't need to say it. Watch the games. Watch the games yourself. How many wins did they have last year, Steve?
Yeah.
4-13. How many wins do we have this year, Steve?
We're already at 4 wins.
Thank you. So you know what? The arrow is clearly pointing up. He's part of that. He's not the sole reason why, but his play is certainly helping that. Just like you said, Steve, be open-minded. Open your mind up to the fact that maybe they can win with him.
Most people forget Russell Wilson was not Russell Wilson his first few years in the league. If you go back to statistics, and some of you, I don't know if you aren't old enough or you're too blind to it, but if you go back to the beginning of Russell Wilson's career, he hardly threw the ball. Pete Carroll mostly ran the ball. They had Marshawn. They had that incredible defense.
Yes.
It was only once they won the Super Bowl and they couldn't afford all those players and they couldn't afford to re-sign everybody that it became and their offensive line went into tatters that he started having to be the offense and throwing, and they started like Pete Carroll's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. That was one of his biggest issues in Seattle. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson didn't come to the Ravens his first 2 years in the league and just start chucking it around the field. Like almost all he did was exclusively run. And when he did throw it, it was almost painful at times. He's learned how to be a phenomenal thrower of the ball. Some people would argue that he's still not a phenomenal thrower of the ball. I mean, he throws an incredible. So look, we're 4 years in with Daniel. It's not. There's certain benefits of the doubt that I don't think we should give him anymore. He does irritate the hell out of me. The first few games of the season, he was missing open receivers. I still feel like there's so much for him to work on. I don't think, not to speak for you, but I think you and I are on the same page. We're not saying Daniel is definitely the guy.
Right.
But we should be open-minded to it.
Right.
Give the kid the chance.
That's all. I mean, look, the coaching staff is, and they're being rewarded for it. Why can't we as fans?
Winning cures a lot.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Listen, let's talk about defense. Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say. So, I think you've got to start with Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he's just, what does he have? 3 sacks now in 5 games, and Leonard Williams didn't play, and yet you know what? Leonard Williams has been out. Is this the 3rd game? And really, quite honestly, it was the first, the Dallas game. We felt Leonard Williams' absence, but the last 2 games you really have it. And Dexter Lawrence has been. He's been an All-Pro this year. He's taken his game to another level this season. And again, love what Wink is doing. And now you're going to add Landon Collins to this mix as a linebacker, which I think is great. Here's what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn this over to you. Another quiet game from Thibodeau. And I'm not giving up on him, so don't attack me here. I'm not giving up, but I'm starting to wonder if he's out of position. I wonder if he should be moved to linebacker. Just throwing it out there. I was thinking about it today. You are starting to see him round into form a little bit. You're starting to see him a little bit more in the backfield, but I'm wondering if they moved him to linebacker, how he would be. Just a thought. It just popped into my head today during the game.
I think this is almost like the first or second game of the season for him because he missed so much time in the preseason that usually guys come in, especially defensive players, they got to get their wind under them. They get their pass rush under them. It's just different. And so I think, and even when he did come back, he you could tell he wasn't 100%.
Right.
He's starting to get closer to that. And then what I think killed him today is he was in Aaron Rodgers' face most of the game when he was in there. I mean, they took him out and spelled him for O'Shane and some other guys, which I think is great. I like the rotation that Wink is still doing to keep guys fresh. But not having an Aziz in there, I think really hurt. But what I love is he's getting closer. He was being held at least half the time. I had my eye on him when he was in there. There were so many times the offensive tackle had their hand up in him and they weren't calling it. And he was bending the edge. And I'm just like, but I'm disappointed that he doesn't have any sacks, but at the same time, I'm being a little bit more patient with him. I know a lot of people are calling already, like, come on. But again, winning cures a lot.
Right.
And I think it'll come. I think it's just he's off to a rough start with his injuries and whatever, but he's as confident as they come. And I don't think what we saw at Oregon and what we saw in the preseason is a blip. I think it's real. Like his speed is undeniable in his step, but I just don't think the production's here that, but I think it will be. Be patient.
I was watching him closely because on the show I did last week with the guys from the Packers, they both said that the right side of their offensive line is terrible. And so I remember saying during the show, boy, I really hope that, Thibodeau can exploit that. And to your point, he was held 5-6 times, and they just don't seem to throw holding penalties on Green Bay for whatever reason. But again, as I'm watching, and yes, again, there was more pressure by him. So I think he's going to be fine. I'm not panicking. I'm not giving up on him.
The sack that Dexter Lawrence had, he even talked about in his post-game presser. He was probably the thing he was most proud of is that, yes, he didn't get the sack, but it was the pressure. He forced Aaron Rodgers up into Dexter Lawrence. Yes. It wasn't purely Dexter Lawrence's beating his man and then running him down. It was because of the pressure that Kayvon was applying, which forced Aaron Rodgers to move in the pocket away from him. So I think that's still effective. I think the only thing I'll disagree with you on is the loss of Leo. I think it really hurt us last week against Chicago. Chicago was able to run to that side of the line because Leo wasn't there. And I think if Leo was there and when he comes back, I really thought he was going to come back this week.
Yeah.
But when he comes back next week, listen, if there's a game for him to come back, it's going to be against Baltimore. And I know later this week, we're going to have a great show and I don't want to ruin that, but they always have a great run blocking line. And Lamar is Lamar. And I think it'll really, really, and Lamar gets sacked a lot actually, but it'll really help having Leo back.
Now, what I will say, and again, I was watching Thibodeau a lot today. Here's what I do like, Steve, is that he doesn't give up that corner. Because they tried to run that sweep to his side a couple times, and he was outside, and I saw Aaron Jones and Dylan when they were trying to run that play, they had to cut it inside right into the pressure. So I'll take that. That's still doing his good job. I mean, it's not flashy. It doesn't appear in the box score, but boy, I'll take that as well.
He's made a few mistakes so far this season, but for the most part, he sets a very good edge. And he's talked so much about Jihad Ward. They call him Hadi.
Mm,
and how he's been a mentor. And I know when they signed him in the offseason, we're like, oh, he's probably going to, he's not a much of a player, but he'll probably just be a mentor. Well, we were wrong. He's been a hell of a player for us.
yes.
He's made countless plays already this season on defense, but I do think they're speaking the truth. Like that guy's been in that defensive edge room and he really is mentoring these guys. And he's probably talked to them for Wink and said, listen, setting the edge needs to be our number one thing. Set that edge, stop the run. Everything else comes after that.
And maybe that's why he was brought in, Steve, for just that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, Julian Love back from the concussion, 6 tackles today. He was solid.
Yep.
You could just see these guys want to be on the field. They want to contribute. They look like they're having fun. Like they love the system and they
How about Adoree supporting the run with
oof,
those tackles?
yes.
I mean, to be a lockdown corner, and make no mistake, everybody, he had one bad game this season, the Dallas game, but for the most part, all of last year, he was rated as a top 10 corner in the league, and he's been playing unbelievable this season. Now, we'd like him to have lots of, when we think of the best corners, we think, oh, Steven, you're an idiot. What about interceptions? Okay, I get that. Like that would be nice. How many times have we been frustrated he didn't pull down an interception? But the most important thing is making sure the wide receiver doesn't catch the ball. And he's almost as good as they've been in the NFL last year and now this year. But it's not always that you also get the run support. So for him to be that quality of a corner that you don't have to worry, you can put him on the best wide receiver, leave him on an island, let him lock him down. But to also be able to support the run the way he did, like today, oh man, you gotta.
But I hope his injury isn't serious. He didn't
Yeah,
come back.
he left with a knee. It didn't sound like it was too serious. They said that I was watching some of the media on Twitter during the game this morning, and everybody said he came back out. He actually put his pads back on. They were like, "Oh, does this mean he's going to go back in?" And he didn't. He didn't go back in, obviously, but it wasn't like, "Oh my God, take him to the X-ray room, cart him off the field." Like maybe he just tweaked it. Let's be hopeful.
Yeah. And
But the reason,
go
but
ahead.
the
I'm
reason,
sorry.
but the reason I brought him up is I thought when he went down and we were down to those two backups, and then Fabian Moreau went down for a little bit. I was
Yes.
like, all right, game over. Aaron Rodgers is just going to pick us apart. And he didn't.
Right. And that's what I mean. Next man up, Bobby Lane on that play with Alan Lazard was just what a hit.
Yeah.
Hitting the ball, hitting the. I mean, they're doing whatever that it takes. And you so appropriately gave it a shout out on Twitter. I was very high on Dane Belton. I love him.
Yes.
I love what he adds. And I think he's going to be great back there. And they're blitzing him. And he's up there with Julian Love, and he's up there with X-Man, and he's supporting the run. I could not be happier. He proved me right. And
Jalen Smith,
yeah,
another
thank you. That was my other one.
another 6 tackles. Tony Jefferson, a safety that we signed off the scrap heap, so to speak. He was from Baltimore. He's been on a few teams. He's in his 30s now. I mean, his days of being one of the top safeties is over. He's a nice player. He had 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo tackles.
Yeah.
Nick McLeod, Justin Lane, their ability to bring these guys in, and for Joe Shane as our general manager and our pro scouting department to work with Wink and his position coaches and say, what do you want? If we're going to go buy groceries, what's the dish you're going to make though? Like talk to us about the meal. Is this going to be worth it? Yes. And you can tell they're on the same page. They know exactly the type of player they want, whether they've worked with them in the past or like a Jalen Smith, they know him, they've scouted him, they remember the draft, they've seen his tape. They bring him in for the workouts. Like they don't, the last regimes, it was almost like they'd sign a guy and it was almost like, are they doing it to make us as fans happy? Like they're signing a guy and then they don't use him correctly, or it doesn't seem to click. These guys are brought in and they immediately contribute.
And isn't it funny? Jalen Smith was brought in 2 weeks ago ahead of the Packer game. And he played there for a little bit last year. I just,
And we had him here last year.
I know that, but was that part of the thinking also? Help us against Green Bay? I'm sure it was.
I don't know. I think the thinking was these guys are just really good at knowing how to put players in position to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. It's great to see. And all of a sudden we're all confident, going into the Baltimore game next week now.
Well, I'm not confident about that.
You know what? Again, hey, bring them on. Why not? Let's take a shot.
I thought going into the season when we did our predictions that we had a chance to surprise some teams. I thought Baltimore would be a team that we could surprise because Wink knows them so well.
Right.
And clearly he's going to be motivated. We all know why he's going to be motivated. But they have two Pro Bowl corners who are having a terrible year.
Yes.
And I was watching the pregame shows today and they were talking about what the hell's going on in Baltimore. Well, I could tell you what's going on in Baltimore. It's probably because they don't have Wink anymore.
Yeah.
As their defensive coordinator. They were so quick to run him. Harbaugh was so quick to run him out of town. Like, one off year by Wink and let's get rid of you.
Right.
I think we have a puncher's chance. If we were able to beat Green Bay at what was essentially an away game, it was a good friend of mine, a really good friend of mine was there today. He traveled a few days ago with his wife and his buddy's wife, and they were at the game, and I was texting with him today constantly. And it's like the players said in the post-game presser, the players, Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, and the post-game pressers all said they were shocked that it was basically an away game. It was mostly Green Bay Packer fans. And having had the benefit of watching your show a number of days ago with those guys from the Packers podcast that you had on, and one of them is there in London.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm not going to be so surprised if there's Packer fans. So the fact that we won in what was essentially a Green Bay Packers game against one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, against a pony offense with those two running backs and all the things we had to be concerned about, and a defense that had a ferocious pass rush, and why not?
Well, right. And look, that defense is going to want to show up against Baltimore for Wink. You know it. You know he's going to have them motivated. Yeah. That's gonna go through that entire locker room. So again, to your point, let's take a shot. Well, I'm not, put it this way, and I alluded to this earlier. There's no game on this schedule now, Steve, that I'm looking at saying, you know what, we don't have a chance.
The only one
it's only 5 games, but you know what, it feels really good right now.
The only games that I look ahead, not to look ahead, but the games that still scare me are those Eagles games.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
they are playing very well, but hey, so are we.
That's right.
So are we. So I'll take my shot, and for everybody watching and who are listening, so Steve mentioned it earlier, so I'm just going to put it out there now. This week, one of the reasons why we're doing a show now is because later this week on Thursday, we will be recording a show with someone associated with the Baltimore Ravens. So it's going to come out later this week, but still, if you like those shows where we're giving you scattering reports and giving you some insights on the Giants opponents, you're going to have a fun one this week because boy, oh boy, this is going to be a fun game. I think we're all looking forward to this game, and we're excited for that show. Please continue to subscribe on YouTube and give us the 5-star ratings if you download. We love the support. We love bringing you content. Steve?
And I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick shout out to one of my best friends, my buddy Mike Volpe, who was a guest a number of episodes ago when we played the Jets in the preseason. He, much like we had all of our guests in the preseason predict the schedule for the upcoming year of who would win and who wouldn't, he predicted his Jets would have the record they have and the games that they won. So shout out to him. It's definitely, I think, fun to watch all of our guests who've been on make those predictions. And hey, if anyone's listening or watching and you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to Carl directly on Twitter or the Giants Zone account. I know, Carl, you've got quite a number of guests lined up, but we're always open to more. So
absolutely right. And we love talking with all of you. We love having you on. I mean, this show is for you. So don't
Yeah.
hesitate. Please let us know. Come on. We want to hear what you have to say. And we love the different point of view here. So Steve, great show tonight. Great win today. Let's enjoy this for a couple days and let's gear up for the Ravens show Thursday night. What do you say, buddy?
4-1. I'm going to sleep well tonight, baby.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Good job tonight as always. Everybody, thank you so much. Again, great win today. Feels good to be a Giant fan. It's nice to have some pride being a Giant fan again. Enjoy the show, and we'll see you all later this week. Have a good night.